The term dark night of the soul has resonated deeply through centuries, representing not merely poetic language, but a profound spiritual phenomenon explored meticulously by mystics, philosophers, and psychologists alike. The original formulation of this concept traces back to the 16th century Spanish mystic, Saint John of the Cross, whose writings offered a powerful insight into the nature and purpose of deep spiritual suffering and transformation. Although initially described within a Christian context, the concept has transcended religious boundaries, emerging in modern discourse as a widely recognized existential experience relevant to anyone encountering profound personal or spiritual crisis. Saint John of the Cross's influential text, The Dark Night of the Soul, was originally intended to guide fellow monks and spiritual seekers through periods of intense spiritual dryness, confusion. He meticulously differentiated two phases of this night. First, the dark night of the senses, and second, the deeper and more profound dark night of the spirit. While the dark night of the senses describes the loss of pleasure in worldly experiences and previously comforting spiritual practices, the dark night of the spirit is a far deeper crisis, characterized by an overwhelming sense of abandonment, doubt, existential dread, and an acute loss of spiritual clarity and comfort. One of the greatest misconceptions about the dark night of the soul is that it represents depression or emotional illness. Although the symptoms of depression, emptiness, despair, loss of meaning can overlap significantly with the dark night, important distinctions exist. Depression is typically understood through clinical and psychological frameworks as a condition, often requiring medical or therapeutic intervention. By contrast, the dark night of the soul is fundamentally a spiritual or existential experience. Its root lies not primarily in chemical imbalances or psychological disorders, but rather in profound shifts occurring within a person's inner spiritual or philosophical life. Another misconception is viewing the dark night as punishment or spiritual failure. Saint John of the Cross clearly rejected this idea. Instead, he saw the dark night as evidence of spiritual progression, a transformative process indicating a deeper movement toward authentic spiritual maturity. The individual is undergoing purification, a stripping away of superficial comforts, attachments, and illusions that previously sustained their sense of self or spiritual identity. This purification, though intensely painful, ultimately serves the soul's higher good, facilitating genuine inner freedom and clarity. But what exactly does someone experiencing a dark night of the soul feel and encounter? Typically, one feels profound existential emptiness. Activities and relationships that once provided meaning suddenly seem hollow or insufficient. There is often a deep questioning of life's purpose, spiritual beliefs, and personal identity. Individuals commonly experience a sense of alienation or detachment from loved ones, from familiar communities, even from themselves. Additionally, this spiritual crisis is frequently accompanied by feelings of abandonment or rejection by the divine, as if one's prayers and spiritual practices no longer reach their intended destination. This perceived absence of God or higher meaning is among the most painful elements of the dark night. One may sense a complete spiritual desertion, an overwhelming feeling of solitude, loss, and despair. Paradoxically, this absence is, according to St. John, not abandonment at all, but a necessary silence. A divine space wherein deeper transformation quietly unfolds. Beneath the surface of suffering, historical examples from the lives of mystics and saints provide profound insight into the nature of this transformative darkness. Mother Teresa of Calcutta's spiritual diaries, revealed after her death, famously illustrated decades of internal darkness, known globally for her radiant compassion and relentless charity. Mother Teresa privately described years of profound spiritual dryness, silence, and an excruciating sense of God's absence. Her experience closely parallels the dark night described by St. John of the Cross, demonstrating how even those considered spiritually accomplished can endure prolonged and profound inner darkness. Similarly, St. John himself endured extreme suffering in isolation, imprisoned, physically tortured, and spiritually tested. His imprisonment, marked by darkness and deprivation, was not merely physical punishment. It symbolized a deeper spiritual trial, through which his own dark night emerged. Yet from this suffering came his most profound insights into the nature of spiritual purification and transformation. From these examples, one clearly sees the paradox of the dark night, a profoundly distressing experience that nonetheless leads toward spiritual growth, greater authenticity, and genuine inner freedom. The suffering is not meaningless nor intended to punish. Rather, it strips away superficial attachments, material, emotional, spiritual, revealing a deeper reality, a more authentic relationship with self, others, and the divine. Carl Jung, the influential 20th century psychologist, similarly explored experiences resembling the dark night. In his writings on individuation, Jung viewed profound personal crises as necessary moments of growth, forcing individuals to confront suppressed aspects of their psyche, what he termed the shadow. Only through embracing and integrating these painful, unconscious elements can individuals achieve psychological wholeness and true maturity. Jung's perspective highlights the universal human significance of such deep crises, not simply religious experiences, but broadly human ones, central to personal development and existential meaning-making. Furthermore, modern philosophical existentialism articulates similar themes. Existential philosophers like Søren Kierkegaard described periods of intense existential anxiety, experiences closely paralleling the spiritual dark night. For Kierkegaard, profound anxiety arose from confronting one's freedom and the inherent uncertainty of existence. Such anxiety was not pathological, but deeply meaningful, a sign of authentic existential engagement and spiritual awakening. But why must spiritual growth involve suffering at all? Why should meaningful transformation require periods of profound darkness? Philosophically, this necessity arises from the very nature of growth and maturity. Human beings instinctively resist change, clinging to comfortable illusions and identities even when they no longer serve us. Genuine growth thus often requires discomfort, disruption, and sometimes painful dismantling of previous assumptions and identities. St. John of the Cross explained this clearly. The dark night is not arbitrary pain. Rather, it purposefully strips away false attachments, forcing the soul to rely solely upon divine presence and grace, without reliance on comfortable feelings, pleasurable sensations, or familiar beliefs. Through this purification, the soul learns humility, compassion, genuine faith, and authentic spiritual freedom. Once stripped of illusions and false comforts, one emerges from the dark night renewed, more compassionate, clearer in purpose, and authentically connected to the deeper reality of existence. Nonetheless, an important caution is necessary. Many experience the dark night as spiritually transformative. This does not imply all suffering should be romanticized. Suffering, whether spiritual or psychological, must be approached with sensitivity and discernment. It is crucial to differentiate spiritually transformative experiences from conditions that genuinely require medical or psychological intervention. Not every dark experience is spiritually transformative, and attempting to impose spiritual meaning onto all forms of suffering can lead to harmful misunderstandings or neglect of necessary treatments. For those currently experiencing the dark night, compassionate encouragement, not platitudes, is crucial. The dark night is indeed painful and confusing, yet it is also temporary and purposeful. Understanding that one is not alone, that many have walked this path and emerged profoundly transformed, can offer comfort without minimizing the intensity of the experience. Those experiencing the dark night benefit immensely from compassionate companionship, patient listening, and gentle guidance. Practical support from trusted spiritual mentors, counselors, or therapists often proves invaluable, helping individuals navigate their confusion and pain responsibly and effectively. Ultimately, the dark night of the soul remains a profoundly human and spiritual phenomenon, one whose significance and potential cannot be underestimated. Far from a mere metaphor or poetic phrase, it represents a vital dimension of human, spiritual, and existential growth, capable of leading individuals toward genuine authenticity, compassion, and spiritual maturity. Yet it requires careful discernment, compassionate support, and patient endurance. As St. John himself encouraged, one must trust quietly, patiently, even through darkness, knowing that dawn inevitably follows night. Through this process, painful though it is, emerges clarity, authenticity, and a deeper spiritual maturity than previously imagined possible. In the words of St. John of the Cross, to come to be what you are not, you must go by a way in which you are not. Thus, embracing the darkness with patience, humility, and compassion, we move toward profound spiritual awakening, emerging from the dark night genuinely transformed, authentically alive, and deeply connected to the true essence of life itself.